You're listening to Soberoso, a show dedicated to alcoholics, addicts, survivors of abuse, overcomers of great tragedies, and those of us with mental health issues too. Each week, we invite guests and listeners from around the world to listen in as we have casual conversations with regular people like you and me who've, against all odds, turned their lives around. If you're a family member of someone suffering from alcoholism or addiction, a newcomer or old-timer, or sober curious, this show is for you. Join us now on the Soberoso Podcast with your host, Dora Gosselin, in sharing our passion for recovery.
Hello, beautiful peeps, and welcome back to another episode of Soberoso, the podcast. If this is your first time joining us, we welcome you with open arms. And if you are a repeat listener, thank you for your continued love and support. My name is Dora, and I am your grateful host of this show. I am also a recovering alcoholic, addict, and codependent no more. In 2018, I walked away from a 30-year career of drinking and drugging, and I am here to normalize conversations around alcoholism, addiction, and mental health issues by sharing my personal recovery story and interviewing many others who are doing the same. Our guests include people of all different ages and backgrounds from many parts of the world who share their true life experiences of transformation and what their lives were like before and after getting clean and sober and finding recovery. We are recovering out loud to end the suffering in silence for those who have not yet found their way or their voice. Join us here every week in sharing our passion for recovery and stay oh so sober with Soberoso.
Warning. This podcast deals with mature subject matter that may not be suitable for all listeners. It may contain talk of sex, drugs, alcohol, abuse, and have the occasional profanity. Our stories may also be triggering to some. We share our experiences openly to demonstrate that it is never too late to change. And we do recover.
Catie Reay, it is a pleasure to have you here on the Soberoso show today, and I'm looking forward to hearing all about your story and sharing it with our listeners out there who are tuning in right here, right now.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
It is my pleasure. So, Catie, are you in Wyoming? Is that correct?
I am. Yep, in Wyoming.
You know, this podcast takes me all around the world, so I'm always curious as, what's going on there, I guess, with the pandemic, with, what's going on in Wyoming.
Wyoming is pretty conservative, pretty laid back, pretty chill. So we haven't seen a whole lot of shutdowns or mandates. We also have a really small population in Wyoming, and those who are here are very spread out. So I think that also plays into what kind of impacts we've seen. So we have had some up and downs. As far as total number of outbreaks, it's been pretty minimal here in Wyoming.
You're okay in Wyoming.
Well, I'd say, okay, subjective. And of course, definitely depending on, I think everybody's impacted differently. I think the world collectively is grieving together with what's going on. And regardless of how heavily each state is impacted, I think everyone is just experiencing this all in a different way. And so for those who are experiencing lockdowns and heavy restrictions and mandates and travel restrictions, we just want you to know, like, our hearts and our prayers go out to you, and we're proud of you for keeping yourself safe. And I'm so sorry for those who've lost family members and have had to recover.
Oh, yes, it has been some strange times in our world, that's for sure. All right, Catie, so why don't you start by telling us when your Soberoso is?
December this year will be my 11-year anniversary.
11 years. You don't look old enough to have 11 years in sobriety. Wow, that's fantastic.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, well, do you want to back us up and tell us what was going on in your life about 12 years ago, or what were some of your behaviors that you might have a problem with alcoholism or addiction?
Absolutely. So for those of you who haven't heard my story, I was born in a religious cult. I went through a tremendous amount of sexual abuse at the hand of a family member, and that led to really unhealthy coping mechanisms. And I had family that was drinking and using drugs at very young ages, and I saw it helping them cope through the same trauma that they were going through in our childhood. And I said, hey, me too. Like, I want to escape. I don't want to be going through all of the feels of what we're experiencing. So why not give this a try? And I started using drugs and drinking pretty heavily at the age of 11. And that persisted through my elementary years, my middle school years, and into high school. And it was in high school that I started, freshman year of high school, that I started experimenting with heavier drugs like hallucinogenics and party drugs. And it got to a point where I just didn't recognize myself anymore. And I wanted to know what was underneath. It creates this mask when you use drugs for so long. So.
Wow. Well, you have, there's a lot of questions I have for you naturally already, but the first thing I want to point out is that is a common thread through so many alcoholics and addicts, and myself as well, is this escape. We start dabbling in drugs and drinking sometimes, to fit in or to just do what everybody else is doing. But a lot of the times it is escaping and a coping mechanism. So you mentioned that you grew up in a cult. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that? Were you born into this scenario, or did you move there?
Yes, I was born in a religious cult. My parents married in, and the cult leader was a friend of theirs. And like all, I think, well-meaning leaders who become cult leaders have a vision that initially is a passionate mindset that they want to bring other people in on, and they want to help other people carry out this same vision. And along the way, their theology gets really skewed. And my parents came in at conception. So the cult leader didn't have to lie to them to get them in. It was, this is my vision. This is my passion. I want to help other people carry out this same vision and passion. And then eventually it grew so large, and the theology was so broken and so skewed that they were perpetuating the rape of women, children, writing of bad checks, and trying to think of the other word. They were bad people. They were really bad people. There was an inner leadership ring of men. And if you were in the leadership, you had access to any woman or child or woman's child in this cult, and you had full access to do whatever you wanted with them. And again, it was the perpetuation of sexual abuse of these people. So there was a lot of that going on in the cult. We ran away when I was like 5. So there's a lot of memories that I have of the cult that are repressed, very little that I actually remember being in the cult. But my abuse took place after we left the cult. It was what was expected in the cult was brought home and then expected of us kids to carry out. So it was my older siblings and my parents carry the brunt of the trauma from the cult.
Oh my goodness. Wow. And so this cult that you grew up in at a young age, did you all live together in a community, or did you have your own homes and go meet in a location?
So the cult assigned us housing, vehicles, childcare workers. We had our own house. It was assigned to us by the cult. My parents had jobs assigned to them by the cult. It was very much a dictatorship, and the expectation was to fall in line, say anything, and the threats were heavy. The threats were always like, if you say or do anything outside of the expectation of the cult, we are going to take all of the evidence that we have against you for what you've done inside this cult, and we're going to turn you in. So if we're going down, you're going down with us. My parents lived in constant fear of the repercussions of what would happen if they spoke out.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I don't have the same extent of a story as you do, but which I have not even talked about on this podcast, but I was the first child born into a religious cult. And I was the first baby born there. And it was in British Columbia in Canada. And it was run by a man named Sam Fife, who opened up many cults in the 70s and 80s in the United States and in Canada. But thank God my parents got out of there when my brother came around at the age of, I think I was 3 years old when we got out of there. So yeah, would you name this cult or the organization? Or?
Yeah, so this was Curly Thornton Ministries out of Montana.
Okay. Wow. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm glad your family got out of there, but it sounds like from what you've told us so far that they carried on these teachings, and your abuse continued even after you escaped.
Yes. So my dad was not allowed inside the leadership ring, because I think even inside the filth and the misery of the humans who were inside this leadership ring, they saw something really dark inside my dad that they had zero desire to allow in a position of leadership. And my dad was my older sister's abuser, and he abused her for 10 years and then gave permission to another family member to abuse me for nearly 10 years. So the generational curses ran deep.
Wow. Oh my goodness, girl. My heart breaks for you, but I'm so happy that you have the courage to sit here and talk to me about this, because your courage could be somebody else's survival guide right now, like somebody else that could be going through this and hear that, oh my goodness, I can get through this, or I can do something about it. So I imagine once, you moved away and you started still continuing to experience abuse through your father and another family member, this is when the alcohol and the drugs came into your life to cope with what was going on?
Yeah. So it was about 11 years old that I started using drugs and alcohol to cope. And the whole objective was simply to not feel what I was feeling. I didn't have a support system. I didn't have a safe place. The people who were supposed to be keeping me safe were the ones perpetuating the abuse. And therefore, if there was no one here that was safe, and there was no tools and resources for me to feel good, I had something that was answering that need for me. I had something that was giving me something I was lacking, and it was counterfeit. And I didn't know that until much later, that it was counterfeit. And instead of filling the void, that it was actually creating a larger one in me. Being so young and using drugs and alcohol so heavily, I was burning my brain cells before they were developing. I had massive holes in my memory. I had a massive struggle with focus and concentration. My grades were slipping. My attendance was slipping. My behavior was slipping. My siblings and I all slipped through the cracks, and no one knew what was going on. This was a day and age where trauma simply was not looked into the way it is now. The red flags were unknown to educators the way they are now, and trauma-informed care training was not a thing yet. So we're talking late 90s. And my educators simply thought that I was misbehaving, or I was a bad kid, instead of seeing that I was a walking red flag for extraordinary childhood trauma. And this is why I'm working so hard right now on getting legislation passed for teachers nationwide to be trauma-informed care trained, so fewer students like my siblings and I ever fall through the cracks.
Wow, that is just beautiful. I love that you have this purpose and this mission to give back, and because of your own experience, try to change history for other kids out there. I mean, that is just fantastic. I love that.
Please hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to the Soberoso Podcast, and help us normalize conversations around alcoholism and addiction recovery. And now, back to the Soberoso Podcast with your host, Dora Gosselin.
First of all, drinking and drugging at 11 is very young. You know, I probably got about 80 shows up here, and yeah, about 12, 13 is the age when people start toying around with drugs and alcohol. But at 11, that's very young. So when you were using this already to escape, you know, were you drinking to black out? What kind of drugs were you taking to get enough of an escape at that age?
So when you're that small and your body has no tolerance and your body doesn't know how to process those things, I don't know that you even know the end goal as much as you've seen other people experience relief, and you want a taste of that relief. When you are living in constant pain, constant agony, you don't have words for it and you don't know how to process that, you will do and find anything that helps create some relief. I didn't have an end goal because I didn't know what this was going to do for me. My goal each day was simply to feel a little less agony than I woke up with. And sometimes that meant blacking out. Sometimes that meant drinking and getting high at the same time. As I got older, my abuse got worse. The degree of abuse that I went into got worse. The level of intoxication I would have inside of a day, when I would do it, how I would do it, where I would do it, who I would invite to do it with me, got worse. And at 11, it was simply just the goal of not feeling. So when you're that young, a couple shots, that does it. That's enough at 11. By the age of 12, I was combining both marijuana and alcohol. And so I was drinking and smoking weed at the same time. And that was, by then I'd been a year into my use and my tolerance was building. So I was building on top of my use.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So you get into high school, and you mentioned that you started getting into heavier drugs like hallucinogenics, which a lot of us also do that. At what point do you realize when you're in high school that what you have been experiencing as a child is not right? Or did you have a sense of this from a young age, that what was happening to you was not right?
So the aha moment for me, the very first one I had, one of my childhood best friends, her mom caught me sexually touching her daughter, and she freaked out. And I was like, that doesn't seem like a normal response from a parent, because I was taught that this is what physical love looked like. Is this not what love looks like? Is sexual touch not showing affection? And as a parent who wasn't trauma informed, she responded any way that a parent who's not trauma informed would, freaked out, never let me see her kid again, labeled me a predator. That was the first red flags I had in my soul. Something's not right.
Mm-hmm.
And I had moments where I was like, why was there no help for me? Why did no one see that and say, there's something wrong here, get this kid some help? It was just immediately that I was labeled a predator. And then later on in 5th or 6th grade, we saw the Good Touch, Bad Touch video. And this was the school-wide, oh my gosh, something's going on. Why are we getting shown a video that this is actually one of the worst things that can happen to you as a child? And if it's happening, you need to scream and tell somebody. And we went home after the Good Touch, Bad Touch video and had a family meeting where our parents gaslit us and told us it was just different. Our family was different. This was a part of our belief system and that it was okay.
Oh my
And the abuse continued for several more years after that.
Oh my goodness. Oh, my heart just breaks for you. So at what age or what point did you get to where you put your foot down and you realize this is not right and this isn't a normal scenario?
So it actually wasn't me. It was my older sister. My older sister told my abuser that she would kill him if he ever touched me again. And she walked in the room with a knife and held it to him and told him, if you ever touch her again, I will kill you. And that's when my abuse stopped. It never happened again after that. And that not all heroes wear capes. And when I say that, my hero in my story and in my healing journey and in every aspect of the level of wisdom and freedom that I've received has been my sister this whole time. It's been my sister.
Oh my goodness. That's so amazing. Wow. Catie Reay, what a story. So at this time when your sister steps in and you realize what's happening in your home is not correct, it's not right, it's not love, I guess at this point you're already an addict, right?
100%.
So,
I had already been relying heavily on drugs and alcohol to help me get from day to day. And this was a point at which my sister told our childhood counselor, this is what's been happening in our home. My dad got prosecuted. He was put in prison, and I spiraled.
So you went even further down the rabbit hole in your addiction.
Yes, this is the point at which I transitioned from using and drinking at home and hiding my addiction to I didn't care who saw. I started identifying as an addict. So I would use at school. At lunch, I would go to the Albertsons across the street. I would steal liquor. I would drink it in the bathroom, and I would come back to school intoxicated. I would take acid out of my locker, and I would fry during my biology class. And I look back on my high school experience, and I keep coming back to this piece where at this point, everyone knew our story. Our town was small enough. It was in every newspaper. Cult survivors at this point were coming out and sharing their testimony on Dr. Phil. Everyone knew our story. And there were two sides to it. First side, people had sympathy and understood why my behavior looked the way that it did. And other people said, there's no excuse for this kind of behavior. It doesn't matter what you've come from or what you've gone through. You get to decide what your life looks like. And if you're going to burn it to the ground, then like we're all here to see you turn into nothing but a pile of ashes. And that's why I'm working so diligently on trauma informing people, helping to educate them so that they can see from a lens of trauma what it looks like when someone has gone through the kinds of things that pretty much anybody who has trauma has gone through. It doesn't matter the extent of the trauma. Sometimes we get into the comparison game, but trauma is trauma and everyone copes with it differently. And when you can see from a lens of trauma and you can see how people are coping and you understand how to navigate them to resources, tools, and support so that they can cope healthy, you can be literally the guiding force that changes their story. And I had a couple people like that in my life who were the guiding force that changed the outcome of my story.
Incredible. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing so openly and honestly with us such a personal experience. And, you are a voice for those that might be in a similar situation right now. You said your father went to prison. You started spiraling even further down. I guess this is really when the trauma catches up to you, when you realize, like, oh my goodness, all these years of my life have been a sham, or this is not love. Like, then does it just like catch up to you from the back, like when you spiral downward even further?
So I don't know that I would say it really caught up to me until I got clean, because I was blocking off the receptors in my brain that would have been physiologically responding to the trauma. I was closing off myself to even addressing it or recognizing it or partnering with it or having to deal with it at all. But the spiral was, my dad was not to me who he was to my sister. My dad was my sister's abuser. My dad was my hero. I did not know he was abusing my sister. My dad was a class act man of God in his big brown leather chair every single morning reading his Bible, put up community programs, ran a men's Bible study, was on the board of our churches. When I tell you he put on the facade so that no one would know, he did it very well. And he had me convinced too.
Wow.
So when we found out, because my mom sat us down for this big family meeting, hey, just a heads up, this is what's been going on, my world was wrecked. I went into denial, or my drug abuse got worse, and I ran from the information for as long as I could. I just ran from it.
Oh my goodness. And so how does getting sober come into an experience in your life like this? Like, how do you realize, I can just imagine, you want to numb out, you want to escape everything. You don't want to cope with that or deal with that. How do you get to a point where you realize that you're going to take away the thing that's helping you cope?
So it was my senior year of high school, and when I say I couldn't recognize myself anymore, I had become someone that I couldn't make eye contact with in the mirror. I had a revelation one morning. I was brushing my teeth and I looked up in the mirror and I couldn't make eye contact with myself. I kept looking away over and over. And I said, this is a problem, that I can't look at the person I've become. I need to do something about this. And I remember telling my mom, I need help. I know I need help. I want to start over. I don't know what that looks like. Can you help me figure that out? And I moved to Montgomery, Alabama, Maxwell Air Force Base. And I lived with my aunt and uncle there for a while where he was stationed. And I trained academically and physically to join the United States military.
Wow. And did you?
I enlisted for the United States Army to be a military police officer. And I took the ASVAB. I was accepted. I came back home, and the same people who were doing the same things, I ended back up in the same circles. I ended back up using and drinking again. I ended up pregnant by a random person, and I had to medically discharge.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
This was a point in my life where if rock bottom had a basement, I was now living in it. And I was positive this was the end of my story. If I had any hope and I had any future, I thought it was the military. But the truth is, when I learned along my healing journey how hard I was running after affirmation and that attaboy, I was willing to get it from someone who I had never had affirmation from before. I never got the good job from my dad. I never got the praise that I needed. And I sought it out so hard that when my uncle said, I am so proud of you for wanting to do this, I was like, yeah, this is the thing. Like, I'll do this to get that pat on the back because I'm starving for it. And I was never supposed to be in the military. I am so grateful for the people who serve our country with the right heart and the right mind. I was going into it as a trauma response. And so the truth is, my pregnancy saved my life. My baby saved my life. And I am so grateful to be a mom. And I'm so grateful for that first child because she woke me up and made me realize that everything I had done leading up to having her, including getting pregnant with her, was all trauma related behavior, and that I needed to get my shit together, and I needed to get help, and I needed to heal in order for her to have a life that didn't look anything like mine.
Incredible. So when you had the news that you were pregnant the first time, is this coinciding with when you decided to get sober?
So I got sober. Yes. So moving back home after enlisting for the Army. Yes, when I got pregnant with my daughter, I was like, never again. Like, I cannot go back to anything ever again. And when I tell you I cold turkeyed, and it was nothing short of a miracle that God just straight up told me, you're either going to get clean and we're going to work on this and you're going to get your life together, or this is going to take you and it's going to take your kid. There is no in between.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to decide now. I was like, I'm done. And I've had a lot of people along my journey ask me, how did you cold turkey? How did you just get clean? A whole decade of use. How did you just get clean? And I tell you, like, miraculous liberation. I woke up and I didn't want it anymore. I woke up and I chose to no longer partner with the spirit that had a stronghold on me for so long. And I knew there was a why bigger than me, that if I went back to abusing drugs, I would eventually partner with the other spirits that had a stronghold on my parents, the things that led to physical, emotional, sexual abuse. Mm-hmm. I said, no, like, I'm not going to bring the sins of the father down to the sins of the son. Like, we're breaking generational curses now.
Beautiful. Wow. What an incredible journey, and what an incredible life. You are going to help so many people. How old is this youngest, your first baby? Because you've got a couple now, right?
Yes, I have 4. I have 4.
Wow.
I know.
You had to count your fingers almost.
For those of you who kind of hear a little bit of the background noise that's gone on so far, that's my youngest. He's 2. And then my son, Noah, is 5. And Malachi is he's 7. He's almost 8. And my daughter is 9.
Wow, how beautiful.
No.
So when you started your sobriety with your first child, who's now 9, did you reach out for help to a recovery community, or did you just white knuckle it and do it on your own? Or did you talk to people about letting go of the addiction when you were pregnant?
So the process of healing was so much more about addressing my trauma than it was about addressing my addiction, because I knew my need for coping was coming. It was the symptom. The desire for drugs and alcohol was a symptom of a deeper issue. And I needed a diagnosis. I needed to know what the deeper issue was. I was not about to address a symptom, knowing that the deeper issue would continue to bring more. And so I addressed the trauma head on, and I started with therapy really intensively. And as I went through therapy and as I started getting healing through therapy, I started recognizing how little the resources and the support that I had that I was the perfect storm for drug and alcohol use.
If you have a wonderful product or service that would benefit our listeners, this ad space right here could be yours. Contact us to become an individual or multiple episode sponsor today.
Now, if you're listening to this and you're like, my story sounds nothing like yours. I didn't go through this radical trauma. I didn't experience abuse of any kind. Honestly, I kind of had like a pretty mild childhood, pretty decent. I just picked up a beer one time and it turned into this radical drinking habit, and I haven't been able to shake it. Addiction creates trauma. So though you may not have come from trauma that created your habit, addiction in itself is going to create trauma along the way, both physical trauma in the body, emotional trauma. And when you understand the brain on trauma, you understand how it responds in your body physiologically. And you may not recognize that so much of your behavior is trauma response. And when you are walking through the process of healing from your addiction, I encourage you to get yourself some therapy for trauma, because you're going to learn some things about yourself that you didn't realize. And when you learn these things, it's so empowering. And often people say, man, I don't know if I want to get into diagnoses, or if I want to get into, giving these behaviors a name, because I feel like I'm partnering with them and I don't really want to partner with them. There is so much power in having a name to the behavior. When you have the name to the behavior, it's the diagnoses that you can then treat. There are so many tools and resources and support systems and groups that can show you how to recognize and then how to address. And when you can address them, you are going to improve the intimacy and the relationships with the people around you. You are going to start mending bridges that you burned a long time ago. You are going to start learning healthy coping mechanisms. You're going to start learning healthy boundaries. If you're someone who struggles with a no, you struggle with a yes, you struggle with commitment, you struggle with change. These are all things that will radically improve in your life so that you can get to a day-to-day result of simply enjoying your life. Enjoying your life. If you're someone who likes to vibe high, you want to live on a higher frequency, you want to be able to step in someone's atmosphere and leave them better off than you found them. Maybe you're a taker. Maybe you're hearing this and you're someone who you like to be in the presence of people who vibe high because it leaves you better off. What if the end goal of getting healing and full circle restoration is that you can be the person that people step in your atmosphere and they leave better than when they first saw you? That's a goal that changes the world, one person at a time. When you can be someone who has experienced such radical freedom and healing that the people around you are so positively impacted just by your presence.
Oh my goodness, girl, you're giving me goosebumps. Just gorgeous, just beautiful words. Wow. Oh, fantastic. When you talked about not naming your behaviors, or basically dealing with them. First of all, we talk about that quite a bit on the show, is that alcohol and addiction is a symptom. It's a symptom of underlying causes and conditions. It is not the alcohol. It's a response to trauma.
Yeah.
And so when we are recovering as addicts or alcoholics, the first thing to leave our habit for me for 30 years, it only took 3 months for me to not crave or think about alcohol or drugs after 30 years of doing it. But that actual substance, the craving for that substance, left my body so quickly. Yeah. But you know what? It's that underlying causes and conditions. Why did I have to fill a void? What am I escaping from? What can I not deal with that I don't want to feel like myself? That is the root of addiction and alcoholism, is the underlying causes and conditions.
You're listening to Soberoso, sharing our passion for recovery.
And you brought a little something up for me. So you mentioned something about, naming your behaviors and patterns. And I remember when I first started my own recovery journey, somebody suggested to me to like read a pamphlet about the different types of abuse. And I didn't want to look at that shit because, my life was filled with it. I didn't want to read about it because I didn't want to say, yeah, that's me. I knew like I was being abused in different forms for many years in different relationships, but I didn't want to look at it and I didn't want to read about it. It's like, why would I want to read about? I mean, I've got enough problems to deal with my own life. Why the hell do I want to read about somebody else's?
Yeah.
But you know what? You're right. When you're able to look at it and pinpoint it and put a name on it, that's when the healing starts. That's when you're able to start healing.
The lie that whatever it is that you believe, the universe, the enemy, Satan, your past, your own, self-conflict, the lie that is rooted in intention for keeping you stagnant is that if you give it a name, you are partnering with it. If you are partnering with it, you are agreeing to all that comes with it. If I give my spacing out a name, which for the longest time, it was just spacing out, not focusing, not staying on task. Space case is what my teachers used to call me. If I give it a name, then I am partnering with it. When a therapist finally gave it a name, it unlocked freedom that I did not realize was possible. And they call it dissociative disorder. And it is on a level that is unreal. I can disassociate for hours on end, and it is an autopilot that my brain gives to my body as a gift so that I do not have to experience the physiological responses of trauma. When I'm triggered, my cortisol goes through the roof. My heart starts to race. My breathing is shallow. I can feel it in my gut. And my brain says, let's give you a break. And it turns off, and I will disassociate. And I thought if I give it a name, I'm partnering with the fact that I have dissociative disorder, and I don't want to do that because I don't want to partner with none of that shit. The moment I gave it a name and realized that's what was going on, I was given tools and resources and coping mechanisms to stay present. For the first time in 20 freaking years, I was able to say, that's what this is. That's what this is. I'm not just a space case. Like, I legitimately have this gnarly trauma response that's happening every single day. And there's a way that I don't have to have it anymore. Mm-hmm. You're telling me that I can stay present. I can recognize when I'm about to disassociate, and I can actually stay present. Holy shit. Why doesn't everybody know about this? Because the lie wants you to believe that if it has a name, you're partnering with it. And if you're partnering with it, there is no freedom. When the truth is the complete opposite. If it has a name, it has a healing mechanism. And the goal is to normalize trauma-related behavior, normalize trauma responses, normalize your triggers so that you can recognize them and you can run after freedom from them like air in your lungs. If you are not pursuing the freedom from the things that have a chokehold on you every single day, you are sitting in your shit and you are missing out on the kind of experience you can really have in this life living with trauma.
Oh my goodness, you've just got so many beautiful words and nuggets of wisdom there, Catie. And I just thank you for sharing so openly and so beautifully. Now, you're a mom of 4 kids.
Yes.
And you've been sober for 10 years, which is absolutely incredible. And I imagine your healing journey goes on every single day. You're still recovering. You're still healing.
Yep, it does. And the truth is, I'll get a weird moment every now and then. The enemy, he's not clever, y'all. He'll use the same shit. He recycles it. I call it the revolving recycling door, where he recycles all the stuff we used to struggle with over and over and over. So I'm 10 years into my recovery. have zero cravings, have zero interest in going back to that lifestyle. I know exactly what it did for me, which was nothing. It just took from me. And randomly, I'm washing dishes and I get this little thought like, you should just go eat a pot brownie today. And I'm like, you're stupid. That's weird. That came out of nowhere. Hard pass, no thanks.
If you are serious about getting clean and sober, and you are ready to make big changes in your life, join us at Recovery in Paradise, where we are offering a 90-day inpatient program for men in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. We have a full English-speaking support staff, ready to help you overcome your alcoholism and addictions. Start your recovery in the tropical destination of Puerto Vallarta with us. Visit our website for more info at www.recoveryinparadisepv.com.
Know that those will only continue to come up as aggressively as you do not deal with them. In the first year or so, the random thoughts over and over, because it was so habit. It was such a habit forming behavior that at this time I was smoking, at this time I was drinking, with these people I was using, that as I was breaking these habits and creating new routines, it would come up. Oh, I'm eating this food. I would normally eat this food when I was high. Oh, I'm drinking this beverage. I would normally drink this beverage with these people doing this drug. It took so long to rewire the neural pathways in my brain. They say the most widely traveled neural pathway is the one that is the strongest and the one that becomes instinct. So if I'm traveling this same neural pathway over and over and over, my thought processes, right? My thought processes are, oh, well, I guess I could. Oh, well, I guess I should. Maybe I can. Over and over and over, it is going to be instinct. The first thought that pops in when drugs and alcohol come up. The very, very least traveled neural pathway is going to be the one that I have to fight to get over to. And that's going to be the one that says, no, I will not. I am not. And it took me a whole year to start creating and strengthening the neural pathway that said, I'm not partnering with these thought processes anymore. I am no longer going to be saying, maybe I could, maybe, oh, kind of miss the smell. Oh, kind of miss the taste. When I started saying no immediately, I dwindled the neural pathway that was so highly traveled down to nothing. So when the thought pops up when I'm washing my dishes, hey, you should go eat a pot brownie. Now instinct is immediately the neural pathway that's traveled the most, and it says hard pass. No thanks. Not interested. So there is no craving. There is no trigger. But the enemy is not clever. He will recycle all the same old shit over and over to try and drag us back into the stuff that he was using before to ruin our lives.
Mm-hmm. You're so right, girl. And you know, for myself, I'll have 3 years in December that I've been clean and sober. And you know, when I know it's absolutely insane after 30 years of drinking and drugging. It's absolutely insane. But, you know, I have been finding, I dream a lot about using, you know, and in the beginning stages, I remember I would wake up crying if I had a using or drinking dream, because in my dreams, I would already be, you know, it wasn't fun. It wasn't like I was at a party in my dream having a good time. It was like, oh my God, I can't believe I drank and drugged again. And do I have to change my date? I can't believe I did this. Do I tell anybody? Do I not tell anybody? And I would wake up crying in that state of mind and then realize, oh my goodness, it's just a dream, you know? But now, I'm still having I'm having the dreams more frequent. And it's almost like, you know, it's that last bit of that habit of that subconscious, you know, because in my waking moments, it's not an automatic response for anything. You know, now I love being sober. I love waking up sober. And that's the memory I want to recreate. You know, it's like, I don't want to give this sobriety thing up for anything. Yeah. I mean, could happen. We never know. But, you know, I love who knew sobriety could be so good? Yeah. But the dreams in the subconscious, they're still happening where I'm drinking and using, but it's got to a point now where I don't wake up crying. It's almost like I know it's a dream and it's a free pass in my sleep. And it's not as, I don't wake up in a panic. It's like, I know I'm dreaming, but yeah, it's that subconscious habit of still like, this is how you dealt with things for 30 years.
Yeah. Well, and the truth is, if you can't be attacked while awake, you will be attacked while asleep. And especially of the things that we used to partner with. So if, talking on a spiritual level, the things that we used to partner with spiritually, they're going to find us when we've got our guards down. And when we're sleeping, we can still have our guards up. I used to write on a piece of paper before I went to sleep every single night, the opposite of the things that I was being attacked with in my sleep. I used to, for nearly a decade, I was attacked with sexual dreams where I was sexually harming other people. I was pursuing minors in my sleep, in my dreams, and I would wake up wrecked, destroyed. Like, this is the opposite of who I am. This is so triggering because this is the shit that I went through. Why am I dreaming like this? And before I went to sleep, I would write down on a piece of paper next to my nightstand that I am not this person. I do not agree with these things. I do not partner with these things. I will not participate in these things. And I am asking for a warrior-like mindset in my sleep. Give me the ability to fight back. And it took me like a week of writing this. And then I remember having a dream where this desire in me rose up to attack this child, and immediately remembered writing this down because I was writing it perpetually, night after night after night. And I remembered, no, I don't partner with these things. I don't agree with this. I'm not doing this. I am not this person. I will not do this. And I am a warrior against this. And I did the opposite in this dream. I actually got this kid to protection. And then all this stuff started coming after me. All these people were chasing after me and screaming at me, saying, no, you are these things. No, you have to do these things. And I knew that the enemy was after my soul so hard because this is the first time I recognized that I was created for something really big. And that's why he wanted to steal my sleep. And he wanted to embed these little lies over and over. You are nothing more than your past. You are nothing more than your choices. You are nothing more than your trauma that you came from. So that was so helpful for me. And if you guys are someone who struggles with these reoccurring dreams over and over of the shit that you've come from, you may consider just writing down opposite affirmations right before you go to sleep and doing it over and over until you have a warrior-like mindset in your dreams where you can advocate for yourself instead of feeling helpless in your sleep.
Beautiful. Great advice. Great tips, Catie. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh, well, this hour has just flown by, but I appreciate and love you so much for your honesty, for your vulnerability. And can you tell our listeners out there how they can find you? How can they connect with you online?
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure. I love every single one of you that's listening. Just know that you're not alone in this fight. You are so worth never quitting on yourself. There is no shame in the struggle, and keep going. Just keep going. You can find me at Catie Reay on Instagram and TikTok. I openly talk about my journey of healing, and I look forward to meeting you all over there.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing so openly. I appreciate you and I appreciate your advocacy and sharing your story. I mean, that's just magic right there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, beautiful peeps. If you are enjoying the Soberoso podcast, we kindly ask that you show us some love and show us your support. There are 3 ways you can do that. 1, by wearing and sharing your passion for recovery with Soberoso and the world by purchasing one of our t-shirts from our website. 2, sign up for a reoccurring donation of $5 to $10 a month using the red Show Some Love button located at the top of our website. Or 3, help us reach more people with this message of recovery by sharing the Soberoso podcast with others And if you are an Apple user, please give us a star rating and a review. I am your grateful host, Dora, and until the next time, stay safe, stay sober, and to thine own self be true.
Please hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to the Soberoso Podcast and help us normalize conversations around alcoholism and addiction recovery. You can join us on Instagram and Facebook at Soberoso and follow your host, Dora Gosselin, on Clubhouse. You are not alone, and we do recover. Wear and share your passion for recovery with our His and Hers merch. Visit us at www.soberoso.com.